A C-17 can't land here, it's impossible. What daring feat would prove him wrong? That's what Tom Walker said the night the Air Force called his farm, and honestly, he meant it. His runway was 3,200 feet of gravel, no control tower, no beacon, no concrete, just dirt, history, and a promise he hadn't broken in over 40 years. But what made it sacred, what made it more than forgotten terrain, was who Tom Walker was and what he carried with him. This isn't just a story about airplanes, it's about legacy. Quiet loyalty, what impossible landing would change everything. Welcome to Graceful Valor Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness are told. Let's uncover what really happened. Tom wasn't just a farmer, he was a veteran, United States Air Force, Gulf War, call sign Duscap, retired tech sergeant. He never talked about it much, not in town, not at the VFW, not even when folks pressed, but every Memorial Day, when others wore pins, Tom wore his silence, and sometimes silence says more than medals ever could. His farm sat on the edge of Denton, Missouri, 80 acres of hard soil and harder winters, passed down from his grandfather, Russell Walker, a WW2 pilot who built the dirt Airstrip in 1943 with a shovel, a compass, and a stubborn belief in civil defense. Tom's father, Mason, kept it going through the Cold War, and when Tom came home in '91, burned out, haunted, and just trying to keep something steady under his boots, he took over. That's how it stayed. 3 generations, one strip of land that never once forgot how to catch a plane. Tom's body was 62. But his hands looked older, scarred knuckles, thick wrists, elbows that didn't straighten all the way. He walked with a slight limp, nothing dramatic, just the kind you earn over time. He rose before sunrise, fed the animals, checked the fence line, then walked the runway with Scout, his old border collie by his side, always east to west, always quiet, and every few months, he'd rake the gravel back into place, even though no one had landed there in years, even though folks told him it was a waste of time, even though the bank had started to hit him, sending red envelopes with plastic windows. You ought to just lease it, someone said at Helen's Diner one morning. Heartland AgriCorp had been buying land all through the county, offered to pay Tom well above market value, enough to pay off the debt and still have something left, but there was a catch. They wanted to tear up the runway, more space for genetically modified corn. Tom didn't even blink. No, just like that, the man asked. Confused, Tom sipped his coffee. I didn't survive war to sell off peace. That shut the table up really quick. The funny thing about dignity is it doesn't announce itself, it just is. It shows up in the way a man wipes his boots before entering the barn, in how he stacks his firewood, in how he salutes an empty flagpole at dawn, even when no one's around to see it. Tom didn't own much, but he kept things, and keeping the airstrip, that mattered more than anyone knew. The call came just past 8 p.m. The rain had started around dusk, heavy, slanting sideways, turning gravel into mush and the sky into one long unbroken bruise. Scout was already curled under the table, paws twitching at the sound of thunder. Tom had just poured a mug of black coffee when the landline rang. Yes, the landline, old beige, wired through the wall beside the pantry. He let it ring twice before answering. Walker Farm. Mr. Walker, this is Colonel James Holloway with the Missouri Air Guard. Do you maintain a private runway? Tom blinked. Since 1943, what's its condition? Tom's voice dropped. Gravel, 3,200 feet, well, no tower, no lights, just cleared brush. Yesterday, the line went quiet, then came the words that would change everything. We have a C-17 inbound carrying emergency ECMO equipment. All nearby airports are weathered in and the pilot requested your coordinates, specifically a C-17. Tom repeated, yes, sir, Colonel, that's impossible, those need twice my length on concrete in daylight. I understand your concern, but the commander knows your strip. Who's the pilot? Captain Joshua Keller. And that stopped Tom cold, because once upon a time, a long time ago, Josh Keller was just a lanky 14-year-old kid with scraped-up knees and big dreams. He used to ride his bike 10 miles to watch Tom fly. He'd sit by the hangar for hours, sketching aircraft in a spiral notebook. Tom taught him how to taxi, let him sit co-pilot on short runs, wrote his letter to the academy, and now that kid, he was asking to land a 100-ton aircraft on gravel in the middle of a storm because he still believed, not in the land, but in the man who had shown him how to leave it. Tom's hand tightened around the receiver. If he crashes, people could die. If that plane doesn't land, Holloway said softly, people will die. Then a pause. Captain Keller said, and I quote, Tom Walker's strip will hold. I learned to fly there. Tom didn't answer right away. He just looked at the rain, then down at Scout, then at the framed photo of his grandfather on the wall, the one with grease-smudged hands and a hammer in his back pocket. I'll light the runway, Tom said quietly, but you tell Keller, if he tears it up, I'll haunt his tail number to retirement. Tom didn't waste time. He went out to the barn, pulled the tarp off the old ammo crate, and dug out the emergency LED markers. Scout followed close, ears down, tail low. The wind clawed at them as they worked. Tom planted each light by hand, staking them deep into the soaked gravel, one after another, forming a narrow corridor of flickering hope. His truck headlights filled the far end. Scout stood guard at the fence line, rain dripping from her Muzzled. Tom's coat was soaked through by the time he keyed the handheld radio. Walker stripped to inbound C-17 runway is marked, surface is wet but holding, wind southwest 28 knots, static. Then a voice, steady, familiar, copy that. Walker strip, Ghost Rider 425 inbound, 5 minutes. Tom closed his eyes, God help us, then he climbed into his truck, parked it at the northern edge, and waited. I wasn't there, but I saw it on someone's phone later, blurry, grainy, but you could hear the engines before you saw the lights. The roar was something primal, 4 turbofans shredding air and gravity all at once, then the landing lights pierced the storm, and then the impossible AC-17 descending onto gravel, flaps full, rear wheels kissing down just feet past Tom's marker. The aircraft skidded, bounced, roared against itself with reverse thrust, 3,000 feet never looked so short. Tom didn't breathe. Neither did Scout, but the plane stopped right before the ditch, right before the edge, and then silence. The Go Rider 425 down safe. The radio crackled, thanks for keeping the lights on. Tom exhaled once, then let his head fall against the steering wheel. You damn fool, he whispered, and he smiled just a little. That night, the barn became an emergency offload point. Josh Keller was the last one off the ramp. He looked different, older, broader, but the eyes were still the same. Tom, he said, smiling. Bet you never thought you'd see this bird land here. Tom crossed his arms, bet you never thought I'd let it. They shook hands in silence. Old soldier, young captain, same uniform, different years, same mission, always. There was a moment just after the roar of the engines faded when everything felt still, no thunder, no shouts, just rain tapping on metal, and the low sound of Tom Walker whispering something into the quiet so soft even Scout didn't lift her ears. The C-17 sat at the far end of the gravel strip, soaked in mist and moonlight. Its massive body looked out of place there, like a whale resting in a shallow creek, but it had landed, and more than that, it had stopped. Tom stepped out of his truck and walked the length of the runway, boots sinking into the softening gravel, flashlight beam dancing over tire ruts and puddles. When he reached the aircraft, the rear cargo ramp was already lowering. Men in uniform moved with quiet urgency, pallets of equipment rolled down steel rails. Ventilators, ECMO machines, surgical supplies, every crate marked with red stencils and waterproof seals. Critical care, one young tech explained. St. Louis Memorial's backup generators failed, they needed everything on board last night. Tom just nodded. He didn't ask questions, didn't need to. He knew what life looked like when it hung on the edge. Josh Keller stepped out of the aircraft about 10 minutes later, still wearing his headset, flight suit soaked through, face streaked with rain, but smiling. That quiet, earned kind of smile. Still can't believe you said yes, he said, shaking Tom's hand. Tom raised an eyebrow. Still can't believe you didn't snap the landing gear in half. Josh laughed, a little softer now. Sir, if I'm being honest, I didn't think we'd stop in time. You almost didn't, Tom replied. Scout turned away. Scout huffed from behind him like she knew her name had been mentioned. The two men stood together for a moment, letting the silence stretch. Then Josh looked out at the strip. You kept it in good shape, he said. I wasn't keeping it for the planes, Tom answered. I was keeping it for the promise. The crew moved quickly. By dawn, most of the equipment had been loaded onto trucks and was already en route to the hospital. Josh stayed behind to supervise the final load. That's when he brought up the second part, the hard part. We got a problem, he told Tom. Getting in was tight, but getting back out. Tom's face hardened. You don't have enough room, not unless we extend the strip. Josh folded his arms. How far? Maybe 80 feet, maybe 100. Tom looked past the existing gravel toward the field beyond. Soybeans, his last crop of the season, planted on credit, meant to cover taxes, feed, heat for winter. I can't give you concrete, Tom said, and I can't move the hill. I'm not asking for either, Josh said, just that patch past the ditch. Tom said nothing. His silence this time wasn't military, it was personal. By noon, the Air Guard had brought in their engineers. They surveyed the extension area, took soil readings, measured gradients. The ditch past the current runway would have to be filled, compacted, and stabilized, all within 24 hours. It could be done, but it came at a cost. Tom stood on the edge of the field while they worked, watching the excavator tear into the soft ridge he'd shaped by hand back in April. He didn't say a word, not when the first row of soybeans was crushed, not when the ditch collapsed, not even when someone from the crowd shouted, "That's a full acre going under," because Tom already knew some crops grow back. But some moments don't. People started showing up. At first, just a few neighbors, then a reporter from the local station, then a Vietnam vet named Everett from the VFW Post who brought folding chairs and hot coffee for the crew. By mid-afternoon, the fence along County Road 7 was lined with pickup trucks and American flags. Nobody yelled, nobody clapped, they just watched, quiet, reverent, as if they all understood something was happening that didn't need to be explained. General Raymond Mace arrived that evening. Air Mobility Command, full dress uniform, 3 stars. He stepped out of a dark SUV and offered his hand. Mr. Walker, I read the dispatch this morning. I had to see the field with my own eyes. Tom nodded. It's seen better days. The general looked at the plane, still idle at the end of the gravel. I doubt it's ever seen a better one. They stood in silence. Then General Mace turned toward the construction crews. My team has authorization To offer federal support, logistics, financial offset, legal protection. Tom raised an eyebrow. And what do you want in return? A lease, the general replied, for the strip. Not the farm, just the runway and 50 feet of margin. He hesitated, and the right to designate this location as a certified emergency landing site for federal operations. Tom's jaw tensed, and then the general said something that changed the air between them. You're a veteran, he said softly. Tom looked up. Tech Sergeant, U.S. Air Force. 87 to 91, you kept this place ready, Mace said, even when the world stopped looking. That's what we do, Tom answered. We hold the line until someone needs it. The contract came the next day, simple, straightforward, a government lease for the airstrip, long-term, renewable, covering all back taxes in the current mortgage. In exchange, basic upgrades, annual maintenance, and permanent designation as a critical infrastructure site. Tom signed it at the kitchen table. Scout lay at his feet, no cameras. No ceremony, just one man, a pen, and a promise finally kept. That afternoon, the C-17 prepared for takeoff. The extension was ready, filled, packed, graded by a military crew that worked through the night with headlamps and grit. Josh walked the strip with Tom one last time. There's no margin for error, he said, no overrun. We don't lift at the right mark. You will, Tom said. Josh nodded, then he reached into his flight jacket and handed Tom a patch, black, worn, but clean, a winged globe, a faded call. Signed. Tom turned it over. His own name was embroidered along the bottom. From the first day I soloed, Josh said, kept it inside my sleeve. Thought maybe it ought to come home. Tom didn't answer, just placed the patch gently into his shirt pocket right over his heart. At 6:12 p.m., the runway cleared. Crowds gathered behind the fence line. Families, veterans, farmers, kids waving flags. The same people who'd watched the landing now stood to witness the departure. The sun was low, light golden, wind still. Josh taxied to the northern edge, ran the last of the system checks, and locked eyes with Tom one more time across the strip. Then the engines screamed, dust rose, gravel buckled, the C-17 shot forward, tires clawing at the ground, speed building, too slow, too late, the nose pitched, lifted, wheels left earth. 100 tons of aircraft climbed into the sky, barely, but enough. The crowd erupted, not loud, but deep, a kind of joy that only comes when something impossible becomes real. Tom didn't cheer, didn't wave, just watched until the silhouette of the plane disappeared into the orange sky. Then he turned to Scout. Still got it, he said. Scout barked once as if to say, you always did. The C-17 disappeared into the sky like it had never touched the ground. The crowd slowly dispersed, some in silence, others with soft handshakes and quiet tears. Nobody wanted to break the spell, not yet. Something sacred had happened on that gravel strip, and everyone knew it. Tom stayed long after they left. He walked the full length of the runway again, slow and steady. The new section still smelled like turned earth and warm metals. Scout followed a step behind, ears alert, tail still. When they reached the far end, Tom knelt down and brushed his fingers across the gravel. Some stones stuck to his calloused hand. He stared at them for a moment, then smiled, still held. He whispered. The next morning, the phone started ringing. At first, it was the county commissioner, then the mayor, then a colonel from the Pentagon, then a journalist from the St. Louis Courier, then 2 different networks, but Tom didn't answer any of them. He left the phone off the hook and fed the chickens instead. That afternoon, a black SUV pulled into the driveway, not military this time, civilian plates, tinted windows, polished paint that didn't belong on a dirt road. A woman stepped out, late 30s, slate gray suit, boots too clean for the farm. She carried a leather portfolio and moved with the kind of stillness that made people notice. Tom met her halfway down the gravel path, wiping his hands on a rag. Sir, she said, my name is Olivia Brooks, Department of Veterans Affairs, Special Liaison for Homeland Infrastructure. Tom squinted. Sounds like a long title for someone who wants something. Olivia smiled. Actually, I came to offer something. They sat at the old picnic table beneath the oak tree out back. Scout rested beneath Tom's boots. Olivia placed a folder on the table, didn't push it across, just let it rest there like something fragile. The Airstrip Coordination Division wants to partner with you, she explained. What happened here has shifted policy discussions at the national level. Tom raised an eyebrow. All I did was turn the lights on. She shook her head. You kept them on for 20 years. Even when no one asked, and when it mattered, they were ready. Olivia opened the folder. Inside, a drafted memorandum. It detailed a new program, Legacy Landing Sites Initiative. Tom's airstrip would be the first official designation, government support, preservation grants. Most of all, she said, it means your story gets told and your field gets protected. Tom looked down at the pages, then up at the sky. Then he said something that caught her off guard. I never kept the runway for planes. Olivia tilted her head. Then why? For the people who'd need them someday, Tom said, and the men who taught me to never close the gate. The news spread quickly. By Friday, a crew from a national broadcast station arrived to film a segment. Tom didn't want to speak on camera, but he did stand beside the runway while they rolled tape, arms folded, Scout at his side. The reporter called it the strip that saved a city. Tom called it just gravel and guts. He said it with a straight face, and it went viral. Within 2 weeks, the first upgrade crew arrived, not to change the runway, but to reinforce it without Erasing its sold, Tom worked beside them, mixed concrete with his own shovel, adjusted the angle of the new marker lights himself. When a young technician tried to correct him, Tom said, "I was laying gravel when you were still laying Legos." The kid apologized, then asked if he could stay and help longer. A month later, the town held a ceremony. Simple, small town. Nothing flashy. The mayor read a statement. The sheriff gave Tom a handmade plaque. A high school choir sang "God Bless America," but it was the crowd that made it real. Dozens of veterans lined the fence, some in uniform, some in ball caps, some with canes, all standing straight, farmers in clean boots, mothers with children on their hips, even a few folks from out of state, ones who had only heard the story and felt they needed to come in. Josh Keller returned too, this time not in a flight suit, but jeans and a jacket, standing quietly near the back. After the song, he stepped forward, reached into his pocket, and handed Tom a folded photo. It was old, weathered. Tom and a teenage Josh standing in front of a rusted Cessna, both squinting in the sun. A single handwritten caption on the back, "The first time I touched sky." Tom didn't say anything, just nodded, then carefully slipped the photo into his jacket, over the same pocket where he still kept Josh's flight patch. That night, back at the house, Tom sat in the barn, no lights, just the sound of crickets and the hum of night settling over the fields. He pulled out a small wooden box from the cabinet. Inside it, his own medals, Bronze Star, Good Conduct, service pins from Desert Shield and Desert Storm. He hadn't opened it in years, not out of shame, just out of choice. He looked at them for a long time, then gently closed the lid again and placed the photo of him and Josh right on top. People kept coming, some to visit, some to ask for advice, some just to say thank you. Tom handled them all the same, kind, short, and direct. He never sought attention, but he respected sincerity. One afternoon, a young Air Force cadet showed up, nervous, jacket too new, salute too crisp. He said, "Sir, I just wanted to stand where it happened." Tom handed him a rake, then helped keep it clear. Anderson Field got its new sign 2 months later, black letters on white steel, Anderson Field, EST 1943. Maintained in honor by TSG Thomas Walker, USAF. Read below it in a smaller script, "For those who kept the lights on." Tom stood beside it while they bolted it to the post, didn't smile, but he did nod once, then walked the full length of the strip, dragging the rake behind him, Scout trailing as always. When he reached the end, he turned around and did it again. By winter, the story had reached national circles. The Department of Defense issued a formal commendation. The Air Force requested permission to train small unit landings there. Tom agreed, but only on one condition: they land quiet, they land clean, and they don't touch the gravel without gloves. They agreed. Around Christmas, Tom received one more letter. It came in a plain envelope with a Department of Defense seal inside, a personal note from the Secretary of the Air Force. One line stood out: "We don't always remember the ones who hold the line, but when we do, it's because men like you refuse to let it fall." Tom read it once, then pinned it inside the barn next to the old photo and Josh's patch. That wall wasn't for memories, it was for reminders. Following spring, a girl named Harper from Denton Elementary wrote Tom a letter. Her class had learned about the airstrip. She wrote, "Dear Mr. Walker, thank you for keeping the runway safe. My dad says people like you are the reason we're still free. If I fly one day, I hope I land where you are." Tom sent back a drawing, a sketch of a plane over a field, just 3 words underneath: "The sky remembers." Spring came early that year, the frost lifted by March, and the gravel on the runway settled with that perfect crunch, the kind that tells you something is solid beneath your feet. Anderson Field looked different now, but only just. The surface had been stabilized, the lighting was cleaner, a new windsock had been added near the north end, but the soul of the place, that stayed the same, because Tom Walker hadn't changed. He still woke before the sun, still fed Scout before himself, still walked the strip twice a day, rake in hand, like a chaplain tending the altar of something he refused to let be forgotten. Only now more people walked with him. The cadets came first. Once a month, a van would arrive from Whiteman Air Force Base carrying half a dozen young men and women, future pilots, future loadmasters, future engineers. Tom never lectured. He handed them each a brush, a bag of gravel, or a sledgehammer, and then he said, "The air doesn't care who you are, only whether you're ready." By the end of the day, they understood. They always did. One morning, a man named Mitchell Hughes showed up, retired colonel, Purple Heart, Afghanistan and Iraq. He said he had been following Tom's story from Virginia. He didn't come to talk, he came to listen. They sat under the oak tree for 3 hours, barely saying a word. Then as he left, Mitchell said, "We all came back carrying something. You turned yours into a landing zone." Tom nodded. "Some things don't leave you," he said, "they just get repurposed." In late April, a film crew from DC came out to make a documentary. They brought drones, lights, and a director with big ideas. Tom agreed to one interview. They asked him how he wanted to be introduced on camera. He thought about it, then said, "Veteran, farmer, watchman, nothing more, nothing less." Anderson Field became a case study in defense circles, how preparedness sometimes depends not on machinery or money, but on memory and the people who remember. The Department of Defense designated a new Category of civilian military partnerships, legacy readiness sites. Tom's field was Site 01, others followed, some old fire towers, some decommissioned landing strips, even a retired naval dock in New Hampshire. But Tom's place, that was the spark. That summer, the town renamed the road leading to the airstrip. It had been County Road 7 for 60 years. Now, the new sign read, "Walker on her way." They held a small ceremony, no marching bands, no politicians, just neighbors. Josh Keller came back for it, so did Olivia Brooks from the VA in General Mason civilian clothes. This time they unveiled a granite marker just inside the fence line, simple, square, etched with care, "To those who kept the lights on when the world went dark." Underneath, TSGT Thomas Walker, USAF, guardian of the strip, keeper of the promise. That night, back at the house, Tom took down the framed photo of his father, the one that always hung above the wood stove. He wiped the glass, cleaned the frame, and hung it inside the barn, right next to the old flight patch from Josh and the letter from the Secretary of the Air Force. Scout sat watching from the haystack. Tom looked at the wall for a long time, then said softly, "You see this, Dad?" They remembered, but the moment that meant the most came a week later, with no cameras and no audience, just a knock at the door around dinner time. Tom opened it to find a boy, couldn't have been more than 12, skinny, nervous, wore a faded Air Force hoodie, 2 sizes too big, in his hands, a folded sheet of notebook paper. Tom looked down at him. "Sir," the boy said, voice shaking, "my dad says I should learn to look men in the eye when they've done something great." Tom crouched, took the paper gently. The boy added, "I want to be a pilot someday. I was hoping maybe you could teach me to see the wind." Tom smiled, small but deep. "You come back when you're ready," he said, "and I'll show you where it waits." The paper had a drawing, a rough sketch of a plane, wings wide, tail low, coming down through clouds toward a short strip line with little dots below it. The boy had written in big letters, "Sometimes you land where someone was brave enough to keep the lights on." Tom pinned it on the wall, right at the center, above medals, above documents, above everything. By fall, the Veterans Network had taken Tom's story and run with it. At reunions in VFW halls, they spoke of Anderson Field the way people speak of places that hold more than just coordinates. The old man who saved a runway, the vet who never quit, the man who taught the gravel to wait. And Tom, he just kept showing up, raking, repairing, listening for the sound of engines far off in the sky. One evening, just as the sun fell low behind the western ridge, Tom took Scout and walked the full strip from end to end. When he got to the south edge, he stopped, looked out across the field, golden now, swaying with dry grass. Then, without a word, he reached into his back pocket and unfolded a letter he hadn't opened in a week. It was from a young soldier stationed overseas. The ink was smudged, the paper worn, but the last lines were clear. "You don't know me, sir, but I know who you are, and if I ever need to land, I hope you're still out there watching." Tom read it twice, then folded it, put it back, and whispered into the wind, "I'll be here." The next morning, he installed a new sign at the northern edge of the runway, not government issued, not part of the lease, just something he carved himself, pinewood, burned lettering. It said, "Veterans, keep watch here," and beneath it, carved faint but firm, "Welcome home. In our darkest moments, kindness still finds a way, often in the quietest places." Not everyone who helps wants recognition. Some just need to know that today someone isn't going hungry, and sometimes that alone is enough to change a life. You may forget the story, but if no one retells it, history stays silent forever. Subscribe to Graceful Valor Stories, where justice is honored, kindness is remembered, and no act of quiet heroism is ever lost.